And I want the audience and the people listening to understand that God does a supernatural work in a supernatural time, and it's not by our works that he can reveal himself. So let's jump in.
Absolutely. Like, it's crazy because I've only been a believer for 6 months. And but my journey to this moment started back when I was 27 years old. And I had just turned 27. I had just built and sold my first company. I just raised $500,000 from investors. I had 25 people working for me. I was just on my way to having this level of success that I've never had before, on my way to building a multi-million-dollar company. And on top of all that, I had the employees, I had the team, I was a CEO, I built it and sold the first company. I had all these things, and I was dating the girl I thought I was going to marry. So on paper, I was like living the dream, but in reality, I felt completely empty inside.
Yeah.
I was building this company. I would go home every day and I would feel so unhappy and so unfulfilled. I was just so lost and so stuck, and I was so unfulfilled that I would get home every day and I would smoke weed just to distract myself from the situation that I was in.
Right.
And Sunday nights were my least favorite night of the week because I knew I had to get up on Monday and go do something that I hated. And the world said, once you have this kind of success, once you raise money, once you have employees, then you'll be happy. And so I thought I was building a palace, and it was actually a prison.
Oh,
And it was just horrible because it's like, what am I doing? Like, yeah, I can have all the success. We're on our way to building $100 million company. In 8 months from that point, we were going to raise another $2 million from investors, and
wow.
before I was 30, I'd be a multimillionaire. But it was just like my spirit is just dying inside, and that hurt because I had sacrificed everything to get to this point. My family, my relationships, my health. I sacrificed
Right.
everything to get here, and just to realize that it was empty, just like that messed me up. And so I remember sitting, and at the time I didn't believe in God, didn't believe in Jesus. I believed in the universe.
Yeah.
It's like the universe. I am the universe. And so
Sure.
I remember sitting one day and I'm like, how did I get to this point? Like, I should be happy. I have the worldly success. I have all these things, but I'm so empty inside. And I realized I don't have purpose. I don't know my purpose in life. And so I started looking, how did I get to this point? I had this massive realization that I got here because I spent my entire life listening to my head rather than my heart. I
Mm.
spent my entire life chasing money rather than fulfillment. And
Yeah.
that led me to spending my entire life chasing someone else's dream. And from that moment on, I made a promise that for the rest of my life, I was going to follow what's inside of me. I was going to follow, what's in my heart. I didn't know back then that, the Bible talks about don't
Yep.
follow your heart. But that's
Right.
what I did. That's all
Yep.
I knew.
Yep.
And so that led to the day that changed my future forever. I was sitting in the living room with my girlfriend at the time, and we're having this like little argument just back and forth, like just this tiny little argument. And there's something inside me that says it's over. And I'm
Mm.
like, it's over. This is the girl that I'm supposed to marry. We already have our future kids named. We already have, what we're going to do after I sell the company and we walk away millionaires. I was like, but I
Wow.
promised that I would listen to that. And so she stops talking, and I look at her and I say, I'm breaking up with you. And she goes, and her eyes get really big and fill with tears. And then my eyes get really big and fill with tears. And then without even saying a word, she gets up, she walks in the kitchen, she grabs her car keys, and she walks out the door.
Mm.
And the moment the door slams, my whole future disappeared.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there like, what did I just do? And I'm experiencing these two very intense emotions. I look and my future just disappeared. And on one end, I'm terrified. Everything that I had planned it's gone like that. And so there's nothing in front of me. And on the other side of that terror is excitement, because if there's nothing in front of me, I can create anything. And
Right.
so I'm sitting there going back and forth between laughing and crying, and I don't know what to do. So I close my eyes, I put my hands on my heart, and I ask God, universe, whatever I called it back then, I said, what's next? And before I could even finish the word next, something in me says India. So I open my eyes and I say, I'm moving to India. And immediately my mind is like, what? India? Are you out of your mind? You have a company. You hate the heat. You hate germs. You hate traveling. What? But I promised that for the rest of my life, I would listen to my heart. And so 6 months later, I downsized my company. I gave away all my stuff, and I bought a one-way ticket to Nepal. My plan was to be gone 3 months, and I ended up being gone 3 years. So I lived at a yoga and meditation retreat in Nepal for 3 months in the Himalayas. I traveled through Myanmar for a month. I lived in Thailand for 2 years. I lived with
Wow.
monks. I worked in an elephant sanctuary. And then everything really shifted when I moved to Bali. So
Yeah.
if anyone has ever seen Eat, Pray, Love, I
Yeah.
lived in the same city, Ubud, where she lived.
Wow.
And it's a totally different world there. Like you go to Ubud and it's in the jungles of Bali and there's monkey forests and everyone's walking around in like white linen clothing saying namaste. Like it's a whole different world. Perfect for new age spirituality. Like
Yeah,
everything,
sure.
crystals, sound bath, all of this,
Sure, sure, sure.
everyone worshiping the universe, everyone manifesting. And
Yep.
so I got there and I'm like, this is where I'm meant to be. And that's actually when I started my coaching business for the first time. And so I gave this talk at this co-working space, and after that talk, I launched my coaching business, and I ended up coaching 100 people one-on-one in my first 8 weeks.
Holy moly.
And yeah, it was crazy. And that's when I realized, like, man, there are so many people that are struggling with this battle between, their head and their heart,
Yeah.
their mediocre self, their greatest self,
Yeah.
who I say now, who the enemy trained you to be and who God created you to be. And
So
there's
good.
this, and I would call it your inner sheep and your inner lion.
Yes.
And so from there, I launched the brand 8 Billion Lions and started coaching and speaking on stages. And I ended up coming back to the US. I left that journey just so unhappy, so unfulfilled, so lost, not knowing my purpose. And I came out of that 3 years, finding my purpose, having passion, just a totally transformed person. And I got back to the US and I thought I was just going to take off.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, this
And
is
I
it.
didn't. I didn't at all.
Oh
I
my
came
gosh.
back and I stayed with my aunt. She
Yeah.
had a spare bedroom, which was her cat's room. And so I was living in the cat room, completely broke, driving like a 1989 piece of junk, like car that it was half spray painted green because I couldn't even
Oh,
afford a second can of spray paint. It was just like,
this
I
is
was
good.
so stuck and it was so frustrating. And I was like, I don't understand. I know my purpose, but why can't I live into my potential? I'm full of
Mm,
greatness. Why can't I live into it? And
it's
I
good.
struggled through that over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I ended up moving out to LA. And my girlfriend at the time was living here, and this was a different girlfriend. This one I was sure was my soulmate. Like the universe
Yeah.
told me she's my soulmate. Um, and then one day, and it was about a year and a few months ago, I found out that she was inappropriately talking to another guy.
Mm,
And it just like
yeah.
never been more crushed in my life, never been more heartbroken before in my life. And this was on a Saturday. And I talked to my coach and he's like, listen, man, I know it hurts. I know it's horrible. I know you just want to lay in bed for the next year, but you got to go be around people. Go be around good people, community of good people. And I'm like, I just got to LA. Like, I don't know a community of good people.
Yeah.
And I was watching this video and someone mentioned church. And I was like, church? Church? I'm so against church. I'm so against the Bible. I'm so against Jesus. Like, but I was desperate. I was heartbroken. And so I Googled churches in LA. I saw the first one. It was like, that looks really boring. I saw the second one called Fearless LA. And it's in a warehouse with neon lights, a glass stage. The pastor wears ripped jeans and a Harley Davidson jacket. I'm like, oh, this
Yeah.
is cool. Like, I'm like, I'll go check this out. And so the next day I got up, I dragged myself to church. And the moment I walked into that building, I just felt I'm meant to be here.